Good morning. I'm going to come on today, and I've had in my dear Mrs Duckie questions a question about getting nice clear images with photopolymer stamps as opposed to with the rubber stamps. So I thought I'd come on and try and share some of the things that might help in getting clear images with photopolymer stamps. And I thought I'd start off with we'd go back in history. So on my shelf here, morning Lisa, I have got a stamp on a wooden block. Now, back in the day, and back certainly when I was first started card making and things, this is how you'd have bought stamps. Morning Molly. They'd have come rubber stamps, red rubber stamps on a wooden block. And then as time went on, they moved away. They brought in these sort of new, trendy, modern stamps. And you've got stamps. I've got one just here. You've got still red rubber stamps, but they come with this foam mount on, and these now have sticky on the back, so all lovely and all good. But the red rubber stamps still have this foam backing just here. And then lots of companies, and ultimately Stampin' Up as well, they resisted to start with because they were a rubber stamp company, so they stuck with red rubber for quite a little while. But then as time went on, they brought in the sort of cling mount stamps, and as time went on again, they started to introduce some photopolymer stamp sets, and these are the ones like this that are sticky, clear, you put on a block. You know, they definitely don't come with blocks attached. You use your acrylic blocks the same as you do with your cling stamps now, because obviously now we don't do them with blocks anymore. They went out a year or two ago. So to lots of extent, they work just the same as our red rubber stamps. Now, there's some things that you can do with these that you can't do with these, and there's some things about these that make them better than these. So one of the things that you can do with red rubber stamps is that you can add heat things to them. So if you want to do things like triple embossing techniques, and if you don't know what that is, don't let it worry you, but it involves some heat. If you've got sort of any heat fibres and things that you've gathered in your craft room over the years, you can use those with red rubber stamps. You cannot do anything involving heat when it comes to your photopolymer stamps, because obviously you would melt them. So that is one way that these you can't use these ways. You can use these because you'd have a job to melt those. But photopolymer stamps really come into their own if you need to line things up. So like these days, our alphabet die stamps and things are all photopolymer, so that you can line all the little letters up next to each other. You can see through the block, you can see exactly where they are. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a few little challenges. And there are some things that you need to know about working with these as opposed to working with red rubber in order to get the best results. And I've just stuck my finger in some ink. Let's see if I can find something to clear that up a little bit. The lady that put in the question was having a particular issue with quite a large areaed photopolymer stamp, and the thing about photopolymer is when we looked at these and when we looked at the ones on the block, we could see that they have this foam sponging in it. They are also good if you are allergic to rubber. Yes, Hannah, that is one other benefit. I suppose that there might be people that are allergic to photopolymer for whom the rubber stamps are better, but who knows. But yes, obviously. But when you look at your rubber stamp, you have this layer of foam. So this bit here is your rubber stamp bit, but it's been mounted onto this foam. Obviously, with a photopolymer stamp, you don't get that. And for lots of stamps, so for lots of the little ones, so if we were just stamping some of these little flowers, for instance, that doesn't really matter. Got a little bit of card just here. Let's find somewhere a ink pad. It doesn't really matter what. So for just using these little flowers just here, to be honest, it doesn't make much difference, and we can just carry on stamping and things. But if we've got a more intricate stamp, or if we've got a larger stamp, then we might need to bring a few more tricks into play. So I'm going to take this stamp just here, which is a solid background. So it's one of those stamps where it stamps the solid background, and the little bits, the bits that you can see in there, are left as like a negative. So we need all of this to stamp. Now the first thing to check is that your stamp hasn't picked up any bits of fluff or glitter, because on a solid stamp like this, that will all show. There is a little bit of fluff on there. So that's the first thing. Try and make sure that the surface of your stamp is clean. You're then going to need to ink it up. So with all stamps, and this may, if you're having problems getting a stamped image, this could be a problem for any type of stamp, is you must make sure that you've completely covered the surface of the stamp. Now this is quite easy to see just here, and this is a nice wet juicy ink pad. If your ink pad is starting to dry out a little bit, and you might find that there's a particular bit, so like if I'd just stamped 100 of those in the middle of that ink pad, the middle of that ink pad might now be dry, whereas the outside is still quite wet. So that's why you want to go tap 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 on your stamps and move your ink pad around as you do it, so that if there are any dry spots on your ink pad, you're sort of compensating for the fact that you're moving your ink pad around. Now I'm just going to stamp this on here. What's the better? It's going to come out absolutely beautiful. That's not bad. But it may be, so there are a little sort of slightly softer spots on that. You know, that's not bad. But what could improve your inking, your stamping with these sorts of stamps, is to ink it all up. Let's do that again. Tap, tap, tap all over, making sure we've compensated for any dry spots on our ink pad. And then I'm going to take something spongy to go underneath. Now this is one of our piercing mats. You can see that I've stamped on that lots of times. If you don't want your piercing mat to look like mine, you can cover it with a little bit of scrap paper or something. So I'm going to put this in, and what I'm doing is I'm putting in the sponge layer. So the sponge layer that we don't have, I'm adding in that bit of squidginess. Now if you haven't got the stamping pierce mat, I can help you with that if you live here in the UK. But alternatively, if you've got an old mouse mat, even a pile of magazines or a wad of paper, something underneath that is just going to give you a little bit, and that is slightly better impression than that one. It's going to give you that little bit of squidginess underneath your stamp, and so particularly if you're working with a big stamp, it's really useful to have that bit of softness, that little bit of give underneath there. So that's probably one of the top tips really for photopolymer stamps, is to put something squidgy, to find yourself, source something squidgy that will go underneath. And it can be all sorts of things. It wants to be quite firm. You don't want it soft. It needs to be quite firm. This is quite a firm sponge. But something like an old mouse mat, or a pile of magazines, or something that's just going to give that little bit of give when you push down on it, will compensate. And if you bear in mind that's what you're doing, you're compensating for the fact that you don't have your sponge layer on your photopolymer stamps. So if you are struggling with photopolymer stamps, don't forget to move your ink pad around in case there's a dry spot on your ink pad that's not picking up. Make sure that they are good and clean. Make sure that you've got something soft underneath. That all should help. And at the end of the day, if you've got a particular stamp and you have tried everything under the sun, and it's still not working, it may be that there's a little bit of glitch in the manufacturing of that particular stamp. You know, for everything that's made, there's always going to be that little odd one that doesn't quite come out of the mould properly or something. So if there is an ongoing problem and you've tried using all of these techniques and it doesn't work, then do get back to your manufacturer, your supplier, demo support, your demonstrator, stamping up stamp, and you know, have a word, because it may be that something happened as it came out of the mould. Now, the other thing that we have in our arsenal, of course, that is really, really useful when it comes to stamping with photopolymer stamps, and I'm looking around wildly. My dear Mrs Duckie would need to be, dear Mrs Duckie, how can I tidy up? How can I ensure that I keep my craft room tidy? Somewhere I should have a stamparatus. I'm going to dig about, because I am very lucky and I am the holder of 2 stamparatus. So we'll get the second one out. But what I haven't got in my second one is my foam mat. So your stamparatus is something else that's going to be an absolute boon if you are struggling with your stamps, because the magic of the whole system means that once you've got your stamp in there, and let me find my this is just my standard sponge insert to go in there. So with a photopolymer one, you need your foam pad in there. We do sell the gridded foam pad, which is slightly better because you can wipe it and it has the grid on it. But other than that, this one is perfectly fine. Let's find a little piece of white card. So obviously the benefit of having the stamparatus is, let's pick up my second magnet just there. You are anchoring your card down so that your card is not moving. You are taking your stamp, and I haven't cleaned this, so it might pick up a little bit of is going to still have a little bit of ink on. Let's sit in that in there. I'm going to pick that up because it's got ink on it. It's there we go, sitting on the card. So we have our stamp positioned in one place, it's not moving. We have our card positioned in one place, it's not moving. Let's imagine we'd just stamped that, and oh my goodness me, we've made a right old hash of that. Look at that, there's bits missing, it's not very dark. Goodness me, what shall we do? So the nice thing about the stamparatus is that you can re-ink your stamp and you can go back in. So I'm going to still not make a very good job of that purposely, because this is okay. This bit over here is still missing. Well, actually there is still some ink on that, so I'm just going to shut it down, and where I can see that has missed, I can sort of concentrate pressure in that particular area. And if it had come up, so there's a little bit, there's a little bit just there that's not quite gone, so let's put a bit more ink on that edge, trying not to knock my tea over, and let's just come back in with some more ink over on that edge and make that a bit darker. So the nice thing about the stamparatus is that if you're finding that you're not able to get enough overall even pressure over your stamp, this is what you want. You want something lovely. Oh, Edison is talking to us. That's very beautiful. Edison is my well, 5-month-old grandson now, and he's having a little chat to us, so that's very good. He's obviously adding in some more tips for using your photopolymer stamps. So yeah, so the really nice thing, if you do struggle with getting a good image with any of your stamps, then something like the Stamparatus is absolutely the way to go, because your card doesn't move, your stamp doesn't move. So if you have to go back in and stamp that 20 times, you can do, and then obviously you've got lots of options for adding in different colours and all sorts of things that you can do. So photopolymer stamps, make sure they're clean, make sure they're well inked and that you've moved your ink pad around. Make sure you've put something squidgy underneath. So even in our Stamparatus, we've put something squidgy underneath. That is sort of twofold. You need your mat in there because obviously these stamps are much thicker than these stamps, so you need to make up that difference in depth, but you also need something squidgy to go in there. If you're really struggling, use your Stamparatus. But yeah, I hope that helps. And as I say, if after trying absolutely everything you still are struggling, it might be worth just having a look to see if there is just some issue with when the stamp came out of the mould. You know, perhaps there is a slight defect that means that you're not getting the image that you want. And if that is the case, and if it is a Stampin' Up stamp that you've just purchased, then please shout either to demonstrator support or to your demonstrator, and we will see what we can do to help you. And there normally is something we can do to help you. So I hope that helped. Finding some solutions to getting a clearer image with your photopolymer stamps.